A reticent young woman employed as a waitress at a prestigious gala faints from fatigue and regains consciousness in an opulent apartment next to a man who formerly lived on the streets and now dons the understated guise of affluence. He identifies her by a birthmark. She devoted her entire life to concealment. Occasionally, the compassion you have imparted, however unobserved, returns to seek you out. When it occurs, it rescues you in the most delicate manner. The ballroom gleamed with the illumination of 100 chandeliers, casting a gentle light over the velvet silence of jazz resonating beneath the vaulted roof. It wafted softly through the room, caressing shimmering evening gowns and the subtle clink of crystal glasses, akin to wind chimes agitated by a zephyr. Laughter emanated effortlessly from polished jaws, a sound characteristic of the elite, both effortless and meticulously cultivated. Amidst the chaos, Leora advanced deliberately, her hands firmly clutching a tray of champagne flutes. The form-fitting black outfit adhered to her physique, each stride deliberate and careful, as though a single deep inhalation may fracture her. The collar of her dress was drenched in sweat. Her right hand moved imperceptibly, an involuntary need to pull the sleeve down farther, concealing the crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist, pale in hue, yet imbued with recollections of childhood spent in seclusion. "Simply endure the night," she murmured to herself, her gaze averted, never encountering another's. She had never envisioned herself in such an environment, enveloped by luxury and the discourse of privilege and authority. However, debts are indifferent to aspirations, as are bills. A moment of shame ensued. Leora required this employment, even if merely for an evening. Her hand quivered slightly as she presented the final flute of champagne to a guest adjacent to the stage. He failed to acknowledge her presence. As she pivoted, her elbow inadvertently contacted the arm of an older woman retreating. In that moment, time fractured. The tray tilted, glasses cascaded, champagne flowed like liquid gold over the marble, followed by the delicate sound of glass shattering under stilettos. All heads turned. Leora avoided every gaze. She lowered her head, retreated, her lips shaping an apology that never transcended the parched sensation in her throat. The room became indistinct. A sudden wave of dizziness overwhelmed her, swift and intense, culminating in her collapse. The sound of her body striking the floor was muted yet unmistakable in the silence that followed a momentary pause in the music. A silver moon pendant detached from her neck, cascading across the polished floor, rotating until it came to a silent halt at the feet of a solitary man near the podium. Kalen Montclair. His hand had just grazed the microphone when he heard the impact. However, it was the subtle clink of metal against stone that captured his attention. Kalen became motionless. He stooped to retrieve it, his fingers encircling the cool silver as if encountering something half-remembered, half-imagined. His gaze remained fixed on the pendant, a plain disc marred at the left edge. A flicker of recognition ignited behind his eyes, strange, uncertain, yet penetrating. "This," he murmured, unsure whether he addressed himself or an elusive presence. A server hurried to assist Leora from the ground. An elderly woman clicked her tongue and remarked, "The poor thing must have fainted." Kalen remained stationary, clutching the necklace as if it were a tether to a distant recollection. Something he had previously lost now re-emerged in the most subtle manner. Morning light filtered through sheer voile curtains, illuminating the polished wood table with pale golden streaks. The room was unfamiliar yet inviting, resembling a dream not belonging to Leora. It was a space untainted by hurried footsteps, landlord shouts, or the musty odor of aged bed linens. The fragrance of lavender delicately caressed her senses, akin to a gentle hand offering solace. Nevertheless, it left her feeling fatigued. Leora opened her eyes, disoriented by the luxurious blanket enveloping her, its fabric smoother than anything she had previously encountered. She propped herself upright, then halted. The room bore no resemblance to any place she had ever visited. Ivory walls, floor-to-ceiling glass doors led to a balcony overlooking a city that was just beginning to awaken. A warm glass of water rested on the small side table adjacent to a crystal vase containing several sprigs of purple lavender. The tranquility was almost unsettling, prompting her to clench her hands. Instinctively, she pulled down her right sleeve to conceal the crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist, a reflex ingrained in her. The door on the left swung open. Kalen entered, devoid of the refined facade typically perceived by others. He wore a rolled-up shirt, and his deep, steady gaze was fixed on her, reminiscent of someone attempting to recollect a nearly forgotten narrative. Leora instinctively recoiled, her spine rigid. "I must leave." Her voice was subdued, yet resolute, arid like the winter breeze. She enveloped herself in the blanket and swung her legs off the bed, her bare feet contacting the cool wooden floor akin to entering a tranquil lake. "You are uninjured," Kalen stated, remaining still. "You merely fainted from fatigue. I returned you." And she said, "I do not require anyone's sympathy," her fingers clasping her opposite wrist as if securing a delicate shell she had adorned for years merely to endure. Kalen nodded, indicating his familiarity with the armor. He had previously observed it. He approached the table, retrieved an envelope he had left there, and positioned it at the side of the bed. "Here is the hospital bill, if you require assistance." "I do not require anything," she reiterated. Not with anger this time, but with a sense of subdued melancholy. A muted sorrow, not vociferous, yet resonating within her chest like an unacknowledged knock. The quiet elongated between them, taut as an excessively drawn rope. She averted her gaze from him. Her gaze remained fixed on the envelope as though it delineated a boundary. Amidst liberation and a vulnerability she had endeavored to conceal throughout her existence. She had never felt so out of place, not even in the orphanage dormitories of her upbringing. There, she had never had to ponder whether kindness incurred price. Leora approached the table, inclined her head slightly, and her fingertips grazed the silver moon pendant at her neck. The coldness of the metal grounded her, serving as a subtle reminder of her consciousness and identity. She remained silent, offering a slight nod that signified not appreciation, but a rejection, one that dismissed an unarticulated proposal. Subsequently, she approached the door. The door opened. The air was crisp, and the light was inconsistent. Colleen refrained from intervening. He merely observed, his gaze fixating on the momentary fall of her sleeve, which unveiled the delicate crescent birthmark on her wrist, as pale as moonlight on tranquil lake. However, on this occasion, he refrained from inquiring. He remained stationary. He remained silent, as if an unarticulated realization had taken root within him. If you were to awaken in a serene environment of opulence, burdened by past traumas, would you embrace kindness or flee from it? Kindly share your activities in the comments section below. Which side do you support, Leoris or Kalen? Exiting the penthouse resembled emerging from an unfamiliar dream, intricately woven from another's desires. Leora ambled cautiously, her movements delicate, as if apprehensive of awakening something within herself that had commenced to stir. The streets remained partially dormant, the city languid in the early tranquility. However, internally, everything had reverted to its previous cadence, the cadence of days, devoid of expectations, obligations, and with nothing remaining to lose save her own self. She traversed two crossroads. Her delicate sneakers became saturated with dew, adhering to the pavement. The bus stop at the corner had not yet illuminated. The moss-covered walls guided her to the boarding home she recognized by its form and aroma. Stale, fatigued, the distorted iron door on the bottom floor continued to rattle due to its deteriorated latch. As she reached for the latch, the landlady's voice emerged from behind the curtain. "Leora, you ought to prepare your belongings. 3 days have elapsed. I can no longer maintain the room." Her voice exhibited no anger, merely the flat, fatigued indifference of one accustomed to declining requests. Leora remained motionless, then nodded, refrained from speaking, and turned away. The sun had disappeared behind a mass of low, ash-gray clouds. The wind infiltrated the collar of her coat. At the intersection, where the pavement was coated with moss, she seated herself on a low concrete step. The environment surrounding her appeared to be in stasis, silent, except for the wind resonating through a corroded wire fence. An unusual, distorted melody resembling an unwritten song. Her canvas bag slipped from her shoulder. A minor tear emerged near the corner. She was oblivious. Instead, she extracted a white envelope from within her coat, the one she had not intended to open. However, with no alternative to grasp, she realized she was unable to refrain from gazing at it. It like gazing at a door in which you lack faith, yet nevertheless harbor a desire for it to open. She ripped it up, revealing a hospital invoice and a short folded note. The language contained within was unadorned. No compliments, no introduction. If you seek genuine employment, I consistently require an individual of your caliber. Only a phone number, devoid of a name. Leora gazed at the numbers for an extended period. Although not vocalized, they inscribed themselves onto her gaze, acute and silent. She grasped the note and ripped it in two. The sound of paper tearing was gentle, akin to a whisper consumed before it could materialize. "I require no one," she declared, her voice fragile, rasping like parched wine through a shattered window. She refrained from crying. Years had elapsed since tears flowed effortlessly, yet her palm quivered imperceptibly until she pulled her sleeve upward, revealing the crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist. She regarded it as though encountering it for the first time, as if it were an unfamiliar object that had just emerged, not from her flesh, but from a distant recess of her memory. Fog begins to descend. Chilly droplets. Neither a deluge nor a tempest. Only a gentle rain reminiscent of the tears of one who ceased weeping long ago. Negative, an individual halted adjacent to her. No inquiries were made. Her identity was unknown to all. Perhaps what frightened her most was that, despite everything, she remained merely an inconspicuous name, unanchored, unremarkable, and unworthy of remembrance. However, within her, a voice reverberated from earlier that morning, faint and indistinct, merely a distant flickering echo. "I did not intend to cause you discomfort. If you require assistance, I consistently seek individuals of your caliber." She rested her head on the wall and shut her eyes, not to slumber, merely to silence the internal cacophony temporarily. Temporarily. The rain did not arrive abruptly, yet it was unyielding. Each drop, delicate as breath, permeated layers of fabric and absorbed into the skin, eliciting a profound, subdued chill. The city, approaching twilight, had diminished in activity. Sounds became muted, obscured by the steady drumming of rain on rooftops and streets adorned with quivering reflections. Leora sat solitary on a weathered park bench, obscured by age and moss. There were no remaining destinations and no individuals to contact. The cousin she had once relied upon for her last hope provided only a tentative and contrite response. "I'm also experiencing difficulties, dear." She experienced neither anger nor disappointment, but a sensation of being the final page in an unread, unfinished book. Her damp hair adhered to her cheeks. The rain pierced her eyes, yet she refrained from blinking it away. No tears were shed. I had not visited in an extended while. She had come to understand that crying was a privilege reserved for those who retained hope. Leora had instead acquired silence, the type that resides in one's breast when no further emotions can be contained. She huddled behind her flimsy coat, legs drawn up on the bench, arms encircling her knees as if she sought to collapse into herself, vanish. Her hand descended to her right wrist, landing upon the crescent-shaped birthmark that had diminished with time, albeit never in significance. "Mother would have advised me against my obstinacy," she whispered into the tempest, her words dissipating like vapor through her grasp. Uncertain of her duration of stay, she detected a subtle lavender scent in the wetness, prompting her to raise her head. A black umbrella obscured the sky above her, shielding her face from the rain. A figure stood there, towering and still. The wind pulled at their coat, yet the umbrella remained steadfast. Those profound, discerning eyes regarded her with a subtle recognition that disturbed her more than anything else. Colleen remained silent initially. He only positioned the umbrella above her, as though anticipating an unarticulated event to either emerge or conclude. The rain continued to descend, enveloping them in a translucent veil that obscured the external world. His eyes then descended to her right wrist, where the birthmark, pale and quivering from the cold, was visible. His gaze remained fixed long enough for time to halt in the interval between them, and then gently, akin to the last fragment of a dream aligning, he remarked, "That birthmark. It's you." His voice faltered in the rain, soft and hoarse. "You are the young girl who shared her bread with me beneath the bridge, correct?" Leora's eyes expanded in astonishment. The wind subsided. The chill within her receded, supplanted by an unfamiliar sensation. Neither terror nor surprise, but a sense akin to being drawn backward through time into a memory so ancient it lacked discernible boundaries. An 8-year-old girl, a loaf of bread split in two. A boy beside her, unkempt and trembling, with subdued eyes, longing for human connection in a city accustomed to indifference. The identical eyes now gazed at her from the visage of an adult male in formal attire and stillness, possessing the same illumination and the same sorrow. She did not respond. She merely gazed at him, thoroughly examined. In that tranquility, the remainder of the world dissipated. The rain, the bench, the park, and the city coalesced into silence. Only two individuals stood confronting each other in the clearing of acknowledgement. No confirmation required, no evidence requested, no further inquiries. Only one silent fact existing between them and everything that would follow. Leora refrained from inquiring about their destination, and when he gently stated, "Let's go home," she acquiesced, as though they had experienced this previously, despite the reality that they had scarcely made eye contact until this moment. She sat behind him in the automobile, unadorned and pristine, not the type of vehicle that reeked of leather or costly cologne as she had envisioned from those residing on the other side. Only the subtle, recognizable aroma of lavender and silence prevailed. Upon their arrival, she re-entered the penthouse, illuminated by the same soft amber light as previously, tranquil and inviting. However, on this occasion, it felt familiar, perhaps due to her being soaked, trembling, and very fatigued to maintain the defenses she had constructed over the years. She settled onto the elongated couch next the window, her hands gripping the hem of her shirt, the rain still adhering to her hair in delicate droplets. He presented her with a towel. She declined it. Her left hand grasped her right wrist firmly, concealing the crescent birthmark as if safeguarding it from sight. However, Colleen observed, and this time he did not avert his gaze. He positioned himself opposite her, maintaining a distance that was not excessive, yet sufficiently proximate for her to perceive his presence. At that moment, she was not completely solitary. He remained silent for an extended period, only speaking when the rain outside had subsided into a calm, consistent rhythm. He commenced, his voice as soft as a whisper, by stating that he once believed he would discover the individual who provided him with a motivation to persevere, even though she was merely a young girl at that time. Leora averted her gaze, yet her posture became rigid, as if she instinctively understood that what followed would irrevocably alter her. During that year, he said as if narrating a tale to himself, "I was 9. My mother has passed away. My father had disappeared. I resided beneath a bridge on the southern periphery of this metropolis, subsisting on what I could pilfer or solicit. No one intervened. No inquiries were made. One day, a girl with disheveled hair and a tattered coat sat beside me and offered me half a piece of bread. Kalen gazed into the void between them, his eyes remote as if observing an antiquated film through obscured glass. She did not inquire about my identity. I was indifferent about whether I had anything to reciprocate. She stated, "The sun will rise tomorrow. and subsequently went away. However, upon turning, she dropped an item. His attention shifted to the silver moon pendant at her throat, subtly radiating in the light. I retrieved it. I retained it for 3 years. Upon my admission to the shelter, I entrusted it to the individual managing inventory. However, I never forgot the girl or her comments. Leora remained silent. Her fingers grazed the pendant, a sensation so subtle it could have dissipated with a single exhalation. This necklace, she murmured, her voice trembling, was the final gift from my mother. I misplaced it once and was unaware of its location. I searched extensively for it. Kaelin acquiesced with a nod. That is how I recognized you. The silence between them no longer seemed vacuous. It has become a bridge, encompassing years, memories, and the pain of two souls that once intersected beneath a world indifferent to their existence. Something within Leora yielded, not in fracture, but in pliability. A wall within her emitted its initial soft sigh. She gazed at him, genuinely observed for the first time that evening. Her voice, when it emerged, was subdued, nearly apprehensive of the response. You succeeded due to my words. Colleen exhibited a smile, a subtle, melancholic smile, yet profound and comforting like a rainless night. I succeeded because you stated it. Silence resumed. However, it now resonated with the rhythm of a heartbeat, and Leora ceased to conceal her wrist. The stillness that ensued after Kaelin's narrative did not dissipate as Leora had anticipated. It did neither dissipate like vapor nor descend like the last drop of a tempest. It persisted, permeating the room, coiling into corners, occupying the voids between her ribs, infiltrating the areas she believed she had securely sealed. He made no inquiries of her, did not approach, nor extended his hand toward her. He sat opposite her, resembling as someone awaiting a response from the wind. His gaze remained resolute, neither imploring nor insistent, but steadfast. A form of forbearance she had not realized still prevailed, a type that felt authentic. Leora stood as though an unnamed force within her had awakened, rising not in defense, but in defiance. Her voice, upon its emergence, no longer possessed the sharpness she employed with landlords or unfamiliar individuals in inclement weather. It quivered, delicate and unrefined, reminiscent of the emotion she had always feared becoming. Your statement is motivated solely by pity for me. Kaelin remained unperturbed and refrained from disputation. He did not hastily attempt to elucidate, as males frequently do when confronted with the delicate burden of a woman's suffering. Instead, he gazed at her intently, unwaveringly, and then lifted a hand to his chest, resting it softly over his heart. He stated that no one retains a memory after 15 years. The voice was subdued, its texture reminiscent of wood polished by the passage of time, eliciting a sense of sadness. A further hush emerged between them. Leora stepped back, not to withdraw, but to assess the ground beneath her and gauge the inclination of her own heart. She extended her hand to her neck, touching the silver moon pendant that remained against her flesh, and traced its cool contour. What was once her solace now resembled a gentle, persistent knock on an inner door. She gazed at him intently, and in her eyes, the barriers had subsided. The skepticism that had hardened her voice for an extended period began to fracture like paint under sunlight or ice, yielding to the initial breath of spring. I have spent the majority of my life feeling superfluous, she remarked, her voice barely audible, akin to rain on glass. When someone expresses a desire to remain, I am uncertain how to respond. Kaelin remained silent. He stood up, approached her deliberately, and meticulously adjusted the chain at her collarbone, akin to arranging a sleeve or smoothing a crease. His fingers never made contact with her flesh, yet he stood enough close for her to perceive her own heartbeat, neither worried nor wholly trusting, merely alive. She remained steadfast, and, as his hand fell, their gazes converged once more, this time devoid of any reservations. Absence of debts, absence of gratitude. Two individuals, previously fractured, positioned at the interstice between what existed and what could potentially emerge if permitted. Leora inhaled deeply. Her hands descended to her sides, relinquishing their grip on the sleeve of her right arm. The crescent-shaped birthmark illuminated softly in the golden lamplight, distinct, tranquil, and serene. Not an aspect to conceal, but rather something she was finally prepared to reveal. Neither party uttered a word. In that quiet apartment, where the rain had ceased and the genuine moon commenced its ascent along the window pane, an occurrence had initiated. Not affection, not in the conventional sense, but rather a more tender and courageous sentiment, one that compels an individual to unfasten the cloak they have worn excessively and reveal themselves unapologetically. The morning sky was overcast, yet light streamed through the cloud layers like milk, calm and consistent, signaling to the city that a new day had commenced. Leora stopped before the Revive Foundation's headquarters, a small yet elegant structure situated discreetly at the periphery of the financial area. She inhaled deeply prior to entering, grasping a slender folder against her torso. Neither a job application nor a note of gratitude, but rather a design. Her steps were deliberate, yet more resolute than ever before. The corridor leading to Kalen's office radiated the same gentle illumination she recalled from the penthouse that initial morning. Although this time she was no longer an aimless guest. She rapped on the door. 3 brief taps. Kalen raised his gaze from his desk, maintaining a calm and poised demeanor, while a subtle softness lingered in the corners of his eyes, suggesting he had been anticipating her arrival all along, uncertain whether she would ever appear. Leora did not seat immediately. She approached his desk, opened her folder, and extracted a single big sheet, printed in full color, featuring a logo. "I have heard that the Foundation still lacks an official emblem," she stated, her tone neutral. "If you are still in search of a designer, I am the one." She slid the page toward him. It featured a minimalist design, yet it was sufficient to elicit a moment of contemplation. A delicate crescent moon positioned within an unclosed circle, extending outward. Beneath it, the inscription reads, "Revive with kindness." Colleen grasped it, initially silent. No compliments, no dramatics, merely a subtle nod. His gaze remained on the open circle, a minor detail he recognized as intentional. "This," he remarked after a pause, his voice subdued, "resembles your pendant significantly." "It is inspired by it," she responded, "by something that never completely closed and perhaps does not require closure." They were silent once more, but not in a manner that burdened the atmosphere. This stillness belonged to 2 individuals who comprehended what needed to be grasped without verbal articulation. No one referenced the previous night. No one recalled the memory from 15 years prior. Leora did not seek assistance. She came to present her talents and the value she had once doubted. Kalen did not extend his hand, invite her to sit, or express pride in her, or acknowledge her transformation. He meticulously placed the design on the desk, signifying the commencement of a partnership. Finally, Leora seated herself, not as a guest or a debtor, but as a collaborator, choosing to remain not out of romantic inclination, but from a more subdued, enduring foundation of gratitude, trust, and a mutual aspiration to create something significant. She no longer required love to perceive her worth. Consequently, she was beginning to comprehend the essence of loving and being loved in a manner that fosters healing. The city sky radiated brilliantly the morning following a prolonged rain. No snow, no intense sun, merely a buoyancy in the atmosphere, pristine and tranquil, as if even the weather was tentatively embracing a novel beginning. Within the expansive hall of the Pool Community Cultural Center, the assembly was dense. Journalists, sponsors, and familiar figures from financial publications populated the space. All attention was directed towards the stage where Kalen Montclair, previously characterized as the cold intellect of medical technology markets, remained composed under the illumination. However, today, there were no projections, growth models, or strategic forecasts presented. Today, Kalen refrained from gazing at the vaulted ceiling, as was his custom, instead maintaining a steady focus straight ahead. Occasionally, his attention subtly shifted toward the right wing of the stage, just out of view. His voice ascended, clear, measured, and distinctly his own. "Today, I formally resign from my position at Montclair Biomed." A murmur rippled through the audience. The crowd was sharp and immediate, akin to a bell tolling at high noon. Cameras flashed, yet Kalen remained undeterred. His tone was unwavering. "I am not retiring," he asserted. "I am merely selecting an alternative path, one I have deferred for too long in favor of pursuits I once deemed more significant." Behind him, a curtain ascended, unveiling the name Revive Foundation, dedicated to healing through kindness. In the backstage area, Leora positioned herself at an angle, observing. She donned a modest knee-length dress, her hair secured low, and held a small notebook. Her attire was not intended for visibility, but rather for inclusion. Amidst the tumult of attention, she remained the silent fulcrum around which all else revolved, as if this moment partially hinged upon her presence. Upon Colleen's departure, he refrained from posing for the media or waving. He proceeded deliberately and unhurriedly to the side stage, where he halted before her. Amidst the glare of lights and the cacophony of inquiries from the audience, a tranquil space emerged around them, sufficiently spacious for two. Leora regarded him with unwavering focus. "Are you certain?" she inquired, her voice so muted it scarcely reached him. Sacrificing everything for a commitment made years prior. Kalen maintained her gaze for a moment, then shook his head, not to dismiss the inquiry, but to reframe it. "No," he asserted, "I am not relinquishing it. I am persisting, but this time with the sole individual who has never demanded anything from me." They lingered for a moment longer. A camera focused on them, capturing the instant. No hand-holding, no embrace, no kiss, merely the proximity between them. Their stance devoid of physical contact or theatrics, yet unmistakably linked. This connection, subtle yet compelling, commanded attention without solicitation. In the shot, they proceeded side by side toward the rear exit of the hall, emerging into the dimming light, where the atmosphere was warmer and footsteps resonated less audibly. There were no declarations of love, no proposals, no elaborate romance. Merely two individuals, previously fractured and solitary, opting to traverse life together, not out of obligation, but as a deliberate decision. This persisted long after public discourse ensued. Some contended he sacrificed everything for a destitute girl who once offered him a portion of bread. Others asserted the matter transcended her. The narrative revolves around the benevolence that rescued him in the pivotal moment. He opted to dedicate his life to it. However, only they were aware of the reality that they were not romantically involved. Concealed. Not yet. They were merely two individuals aiding each other's healing. Occasionally, that suffices to initiate change. Do you believe that a minor act of kindness can transform a life? If this tale resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel to enable us to continue sharing narratives that affirm kindness is everlasting. It patiently anticipates the opportune moment for its return.